Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you may be. Thank you for attending this crowdcast on Frontier AI Readiness. There's a lot of information, there's a lot of emotion, and there's a lot of confusion in the cybersphere at the moment. We're going to try to quickly orient the collective around the events from the past few weeks from the Frontier AI vendors. We're going to make some recommendations, and we are, as an industry, going to talk about how we might move forward together. Let's just begin. At CrowdStrike, like at all large companies, we have lawyers. This is a safe harbor statement. During this crowdcast, we may make mention of products or services. These should not be looked at as forward-looking statements or relied upon as an indication of future events. You can read the rest of this on your own time.
I was hoping you'd read it out loud for the audience.
Yeah, I thought for the sake of everyone and myself, we might just go with it. All right, Mr. CTO, you're spicy. Let's introduce ourselves. I'll go first. My name is Andrew Munchback. I am the Senior Vice President of Technical Sales here at CrowdStrike. I started back in 2015 and have been here for the past 11 years. I come from a network security background. I'm one of CrowdStrike's original customers, and I have a passion for threat hunting and all things adversary. For reasons not only I don't even understand still, I run CrowdStrike subreddit. So if you're over there, hello, I'm Andrew CS. And Ilya, let's go over to you.
Thanks, Andrew. I'm Ilya Zaitsev, Chief Technology Officer at CrowdStrike. I've been with the company a tad longer, about 13 years. The last of those six spent in the CTO department. But when I joined, I was actually the first sales engineer at the company. And in fact, Andrew was one of my first customers. And then I poached him and brought him onto the team. And it's been mostly without regrets. Can't say no regrets, but mostly without regrets.
Mostly is doing a lot of work in that sentence. I appreciate that. All right. Let's move forward. So first topic on the agenda, the AI Frontier Challenge. Ilya, if you could take us through it a little bit and kind of give us some context about why we're here and kind of set the table for what we're going to discuss.
Yeah, sure. So there's a good chance that many of you are paying attention to this topic today because of the recent news we've heard, particularly from Anthropic's Mythos model, and a little bit more recently, OpenAI released their GPT Cyber Edition. And in the minds of many, these models are kind of ushering in a new era of security. They started with an increased ability to write code and reason, but that doesn't just make them better coding agents. As it turns out, it's unlocking this emerging capability that allows these models to not just discover 0 days at higher accuracy than before, but actually create functioning exploit code. And I think even more interestingly, be able to chain them together in ways that a traditional static or even dynamic code scanning tool or penetration testing software was never built to do. And this ultimately is a double-edged sword, because for the defenders, it allows, if used properly, faster automated analysis and response. But those same qualities, if you put them in the hands of adversaries, it could lead to automated exploitation, not just automated, but occurring at terrifying speed. So everyone, organizations everywhere, intuitively understand and are concerned that this kind of power will almost certainly lower the bar, and it's going to open floodgates to techniques and attacks that previously, were only available to the most sophisticated and well-resourced, nation state actors, a handful of savvy e-crime groups. And I don't want to sound dramatic, but it has this potential to turn every piece of software into a ticking time bomb.
Not sounding dramatic and ticky time bomb. I'm not sure that those things go together.
I said potential.
Potentially. Again, potentially doing a lot of work in that.
A lot of work there.
Let's go on to our next topic.
Yeah, so look, the good news is that so far the labs that are developing these frontier models, they recognize these risks. And currently, they've only made those models available to select trusted partners, including CrowdStrike. And that allows us to work together to prioritize and use these capabilities to help enterprises strengthen their resilience against future AI-enabled threats. And collectively, we as an industry, both on the vendor and the community side, we've got a window of opportunity to reinforce our defenses and harness the power of these state-of-the-art capabilities before they disseminate and ultimately proliferate, to hostile actors.
Yeah, with great power comes great responsibility. A lot of bold statements in there. So let's wrap some numbers around it, give some proof points here.
Look, so I talked about, the potential of dissemination and proliferation, but the reality is, make no mistake, this is already happening, right? They already have and will continue to do this, the proliferation that is, regardless of what steps, responsible parties involved are going to take. While these new models have captured the attention of the public, and I think in a very positive way have brought this risk to the top of everyone's mind, including people, non-technical people. These are not new risks in much the same way that, ChatGPT wasn't the first large language model out there and OpenClaw wasn't the first agent ever released. The previous generation of frontier models before, in fact, even in many cases, much less sophisticated and much less controlled open source models, if they were wielded properly, if you had the right harnesses, they've already been demonstrating impressive offensive cyber capabilities that's just gone, a little bit more unnoticed and under the radar. We at CrowdStrike, we've talked extensively about adversaries using AI to accelerate their attacks for a long time. Even before mass availability of AI, by the way, we were documenting a trend that's been running over many years, as you can see here on the chart, in the collapse of mean time to exploitation. It's gone from months to hours. At the same time, the number of reported vulnerabilities just continues to climb. It's kind of a one-way path. These powerful offensive agents that are running, potentially with fully automated kill chains 24/7, that's just going to continue the trajectory that we've already been on.
Yeah, those are great points, and those are great proof points and numbers. If you had to distill it down, you can use a third party here like Gartner. Sort of they're advising their clients that the time between vulnerability discovery and vulnerability exploitation has collapsed from weeks to minutes, and that's certainly a trend, obviously, that you highlighted and one that we're seeing. If we look internally at some of our data, the 2026 CrowdStrike Global Threat Report is out. We've seen an 89% increase in AI-enabled adversaries year over year. The fastest adversary breakout time was about 27 seconds, which is only possible through, as you mentioned, Ilya, kill chain automation, sort of running 24/7. There was a 42% increase in the use of 0 days before they were publicly announced, which is a bit of a terrifying stat, because when you think about this, this was sort of taken before the Mythos TAC apocalypse over the last few weeks. And a lot of that targeting was actually laser focused on edge devices specifically. If you look at breakout time, the average, I think when we first started tracking it, was around 2016, 2017, was something like 9.5 hours was the average breakout time. And I think the fastest we saw was an adversary that had done well researched, still hands on keyboard, was just under 3 minutes. In the years since, that time's been compressed down to a 29-minute average. That's specifically for e-crime adversaries. And then the fastest was 27 seconds, as we just mentioned, which is blistering fast. So things like kill chain specialization, tradecraft sophistication, AI usage are all contributing to this increase in adversary tempo. So that is our setup, Mr. CTO. That's the scary stuff. Let's go through how we can help defenders build a program that's rigid enough to exert some control, but elastic enough to deal with this sort of rapid change world that we're in. Just so we go, I'll tee up the concepts and then we'll deep dive into them. So step one is exploitability over volume. We all love a good CVSS score, but how do we shift to an exploitability mindset? Step two will be continuous validation. So how do we move from point-in-time assessments to real-time signal? Step three is identity and containment. Things that execute are done so by identities. How do we exert control over the identities and contain those identities when things go sideways? Step four is machine speed operations. Whether it's response, patching, remediation, how do we accelerate analysts and drive down the time an adversary has to operate unimpeded? And then step five is deliberate AI use. And this is obviously a huge topic as well. How do we enable the use of AI while still securing endpoints, identities, gateways, and models? As I mentioned, the format, Ilya will review the 5 steps, concepts, kind of outline them. A little bit more tactical, so I'll go into the generalized control that could be used, and then since it is CrowdStrike, I'll briefly mention CrowdStrike's offering. So let's get into it. Exploitability, Mr. Zaitsev, over to you, sir.
Thank you. So I'll start by saying something that I hope is not a controversial statement, but let's not kid ourselves. Legacy vulnerability management has been broken for a long time, long before AI offense and agents got involved. Most organizations have already been discovering and ultimately sitting on more CVEs than they could realistically patch. And AI vulnerability discovery, is it going to make that math any better? So we've got to shift away, as Andrew mentioned in the opening here, from this older prioritization concept that looks at things like severity to something that's more modern and based on exploitability. So exploitability combines a couple different factors, and that includes things like what is the reachability or the exposure of that, vulnerability or the asset it's present on? What is the business and asset context? What threat intelligence